Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
All right. Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of 3 last week with my interview with Joshua Davis. If you didn't listen to that, you want to go back and listen to that before you start today's episode, because we're going to pick up right in the middle of that conversation where we left off. Today's part 2 of 3. So in this episode, Josh is going to be sharing about his choice to jump into social media for the first time ever after he started growing. He's going to be sharing about what it was like to attend his first leadership development conference only a few months after he began his growth and development journey. And he's also going to tell you about what it was like and what it's been like to introduce his children to the principles that he's learning about now to help them grow and develop. So I hope you enjoy today's second part of this 3-part series. Let's jump right in. Shortly after we talked, you saw, because you got on LinkedIn, probably because of my podcast, I assume, since you said you wasn't really on social media and stuff, right?
Well, yeah. So real quick story about that. I had never done any social media, and I refused. And because I had always heard these horror stories about somebody getting on, I don't know, Facebook or whatever, and, throwing their opinions out there and then having some bad consequences. So I didn't want to be that guy, because I can't keep my opinions to myself. So I've never done any social media. And then, with talking with you and listening to your podcast about, hey, get on LinkedIn, I thought, well, it's a professional site. It's not like Facebook where they show you what you had for lunch. This is business and helpful. So I thought, all right, here we go, man. If I'm jumping in the pool, I may as well just dive in head first. And it was, believe it or not, it was really hard for me to make that commitment. And I did. And man, it is awesome to see all the different posts from some good sources. I'm picking up little bits here and there and everywhere. I'm learning different things. I mean, my circle of awareness has just grown exponentially. And but back to where I think you were going is, right away I saw an ad that you and Ray had put on there about the Women's Job Corps down in Auburn.
Yep.
Holding a conference.
Yep, down in Auburn, Alabama. Yep. Yeah,
and the next day I looked at the calendar at work. I took some days off. And I said, I'm going to Alabama. And I'd never done anything like that before. I have never traveled on my own like that before. And so.
How long of a drive was it one way?
Oh, man. Well, thanks to traffic, it was about 11, but it was supposed to be 9. But,
okay.
But hey, the whole way down, I had Winchell University. So it was pretty awesome. And,
that was pretty cool, because Christian Women Job Corps, they did that free event. They ordered 300 books and gave everybody who attended books, and you could come from anywhere. They let us share about it. It wasn't really like a paid ad. We wasn't paying to advertise. We just shared about it on our LinkedIn account and told people, hey, we're doing this. They're sponsoring it. They're putting it on down at the Robert Trent Jones Marriott in actually Opelika, Alabama, where they done that. And they fed y'all breakfast, and they brought us in to speak. And I mean, it's a pretty cool thing, but you ain't never done anything like that either, whether you traveled or not, right? You traveled a long way to get there, and you spent your own money. You paid for your own. You drive a diesel truck, and that wasn't a cheap deal. How much you spent on that whole trip? I'm sure you probably figured it out at some point.
Oh, shoot. I think total overall, the fuel in the hotel, I was somewhere around $350, $400. But
yes. All
for a free conference, right? And but you know what, the experience, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
What was that like for people who maybe there's folks like you who just listen to my podcast? This may be the first podcast somebody listens to, and they may not have got growing yet. And or somebody may be listening to this and somebody like Bill told them, hey, you need to listen to this episode, this guy from St. Peter's. So what would you tell them, that experience was like? For you?
I would say, for me.
Because you come walking in, you didn't know what's going on, right? You know nothing. You know what the people were going to be like, what the place was going to be like, what's expected of you. So what was your experience like? You got out of the truck, walked in to the lobby, and what all happened that day?
Well, the whole place is a resort. So, just finding where we were in there was a little bit of a walk. But you come into this really nice grand building, and the first face I saw was yours. And you're smiling ear to ear. I know, right? I didn't turn around and run. But
you've been better off to see Rhea first instead of me, but I'll do if she's busy.
I saw her second, so it all worked out.
Okay.
But, it was extremely welcoming, and I can't say to the best of my memory that I've ever had an experience like that, where you just feel like you belong, and you're immediately at ease. There's no stress. There were a lot of people that started coming into the room little by little, and getting to talk to some people here and there, getting to know who they were, where they were from, what industry that they were involved with, and just kind of sharing with so many of the people, our common reason of why we're here. And then the breakfast was incredible. So thank you to the Christians group for that. And to sit down and finally listen to you in person, you and Rhea both, and the way that you interact it's comical at times, and then it's extremely heartfelt and impactful in other moments. I love how you intertwine your message and your points that you're trying to make through your own stories, because your personal stories is what draws us in. I can read a textbook or whatever about anything, but if there's no story there for me to relate to, I don't pick up on it. So, the delivery that both of you have, it was perfect for me, and I really enjoyed it. Got to meet some really cool people. And
you sit with someone pretty special to me at your table, I think.
Well, I'll tell you, she's an interesting woman. I got to sit with your mother, and that was really cool. To get to share a little bit of time with her and listen to some of the stories she had about you. So
she knows what fun. I say. I always love to have her in the room, because she knows what I'm saying she knows that it's the truth. She knows a lot of stuff, Rhea don't know, because I was 30 years old when I met Rhea, and I had accidentally got better by age 30, but I still had a whole lot of work to do. But Mom, she knows the whole story.
Yeah, it was just such a great trip, and huge impact for me. Definitely brought me light years ahead of where I was, even a month prior to that.
So you also got to meet Chad Cox too, right?
Oh yeah. Man, what an interesting guy. He's in trenchless industry, kind of where he puts pipes under the roadways or whatever obstruction, but he doesn't have to do anything like that. But real interesting guy. In fact, he was another guest on one of your podcasts, and when I listened to that one, it had a lot of similarities with my own personal story. So as I was listening to it, I was really relating to him. And but yeah, back to when I met him down there at the event, man, what a great guy. He's very friendly and personable, and him and his wife were down there, so I got to spend a few minutes talking with them, and they're just extraordinary people. So definitely a big shout out to him. But yeah, with his podcast, that's kind of what kind of built me up a little bit and gave me enough courage and strength to be here with you today sharing my story. So yeah, big shout out to Chad.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. So anyone listening, Chad's episode is actually episode number 270. If you want to go check that out, take a listen to him and learn about him. And again, Chad's in I think the industry would be civil construction, and he does a lot of drilling and boring under highways and all that kind of stuff. Down, digs a big old hole and puts a bunch of men and equipment down in there, and then starts drilling. So it's pretty neat. And I second what Joshua was saying. Chad Cox is a pretty cool guy in my book.
Oh, and I can't forget to mention that when I come down there, we had talked on the phone, and you said, well, hey, what time you think you're going to get down here? And best guess, what was it, 3:30 or something? And you're like, all right, I'll be there. I'm going to meet you. We're going to go out and do dinner. And it's like, holy cow, this guy's coming an hour to just meet up for dinner. So, and then on top of that, one of the other gentlemen that you had interviewed early on in your series, he was your first interview, I believe, is
Daniel
Ross.
Yep.
And he's like, sure, I'll join you. So we come out to dinner, and the three of us got to hang out and spend some quality time getting to know each other. And man, that was just super cool of both of you to give up your own personal time and just to hang out with a guy you never met before. So man, that really meant a lot, and totally grateful.
Well, I just wanted to do same thing Daniel wanted to do. We wanted to do our part to motivate and inspire you to keep climbing, man. Everybody who knows me knows I post that all the time on my social media posts. Always keep climbing. That's what it means. The reason is you're never going to get there, but you can always get to a higher level. You just ain't never going to reach the top. Not of this leadership mountain. So I appreciate you sharing everything so far. So now I want to tell me about, because when we very first talked, which again was before you came to this conference, you had talked about, listened to 170, 80 episodes. You bought one of my books, I think, I can't remember. And then you said, I went and got 7 Habits because you talk about it all the time. And I had to dive into it because you talk about it so much. And so you dove into that. But you also told me you got a 12-year-old son, Luke, and your daughter is 15. Is that right? Morgan,
yep.
Okay,
and, so she'll be 15 July. He'll be 13 in October. And,
okay, so she's 12 and 14 right now.
Right now, currently.
Okay, yes. So you started doing something special with them too.
Oh yeah. So here I am, a dad, single dad, right? And I'm trying to make the best I can out of my situation with my kids that I only get to see every other week from Friday to Friday. And all I can think is I don't want them to have to suffer through all the problems that I did if I can help them avoid it. So, man, I can't figure out how. I'm thinking how. I'm like, man, these 7 Habits would be great for them, but this book is not for them. And so I'm online looking, and I'm scrolling, and all of a sudden I find 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, and that was written by Sean Covey.
Yep.
I think. And then it comes along with or you can order extra, a little workbook that goes with it. So I thought, man, this is perfect. So I ordered those up, get them here. And then the next weekend I had them, we got up every Saturday morning. We try to get up, have breakfast and hang out. And I throw the books down on the table and I'm like, here you go. What do you think? It kind of gave me a look like, what are you doing to us? But so we opened it up, and our goal is to go through a chapter every time, Saturday morning that we have time available to do so. And it's been hit and miss. There's days where they're like, man, they love it. My daughter takes off with it. And because I think she's like me, she's competitive. She wants to be the first one done and be the best. And then sometimes Luke's a little more combative with it, but overall it's been a really good experience. And then they got so far into it, and then talking with you about it, Luke wanted to talk to you.
Yep.
He's like, well, I got to talk to this guy. And I said,
your 12-year-old son.
Yeah, he was all into it. He, once he had listened to a podcast or two, and then hear the books, and I had some of your books. He's like, well, this guy, he must be pretty important. And I said, man, he's pretty cool. You should get you guys together, And so I talked to you about it down in Alabama at that conference, and you had and thankfully, God bless you, you personalize the book to him. And at the end of that little note in the front, you said, well, when you're done reading this, call me, and you put your number in it. And man, if you could have seen the face he had as soon as he read that, man, he about jumped out of his clothes. It was crazy. He was so excited. I mean, he went downstairs right away and started reading it.
Really?
And I think it only took him 4 or 5 days.
It wasn't long.
And no. And he was through it. And man, he was so excited. I was taking video of him when he called you, and he was pumped. He was pumped. He loved it. So
that's awesome. And he listened to a lot of podcasts. He listened to more than just one or two, didn't he?
He did. Last I asked him, I think he's up in the 60s.
So he's done listening to about 60 episodes. This young man, 12 years old. Look at the influence.
Yeah.
That's what I always tell people when I started my journey. I had no idea how it was going to impact my son, my family, but it spreads when it gets in you. It's got to come out of you, and that's what's awesome. That's why I'm glad you're sharing that story. So go ahead.
Oh, well, with the kids, it's interesting too, because both of them at times I'll ask them questions about their day and this, that, and we try to incorporate into most of those types of conversations. Well, what habit did you use today, and or how did this, all those types of questions. And it's funny, they just start spatting off, what they did that involved this principle, and which friend they tried to get to listen to a podcast. And, it's completely pressure free. I have a little bit of an expectation as a dad that they stay involved with it, but I'm not forcing it on them, and they're staying with it. And it's helped us grow a little bit closer together. And, one of the best things, I think, was right after this started for me. It must have been probably about 3 weeks, maybe a month in. And they just came to me and they said, Dad, you've changed. You're different.
How'd that make you
and
feel?
It just kind of, oh man.
How did it make you feel then versus now when you really look at what it meant? I know it meant something to you then, but it probably means more to you now than it did in that moment, because it probably threw you off a second that moment.
Oh, I didn't really know what there. I was getting ready for the worst. What did I do? But and they followed it up and they said, "Hey, you just seem happier. You're more positive lately. What's going on?" And and that's how bad it was before. I've been so angry for so long. It didn't matter what it was. It could be the smallest thing, and if it just wrecked my moment, it wrecked my whole day. And I wasn't taking responsibility for my own character and my actions and things like that. I was constantly blaming somebody else. And looking back now on that moment where they told me that, it's huge. I think Bill introducing me to your content saved me in a lot of ways. Not just with my job, but just emotionally. And this is pretty powerful stuff. I clicked with it right away. I enjoy reading it, and I've never been a book reader.
All
you
about
couldn't
that
get me
too.
to read a book. Oh man, couldn't do it. I squeaked by with my grades in school. Whatever I needed to play ball, that's all I did. And but now I can't wait to get to the next one. And but so let's see. Here we are. So January 20th to now June 1st. We're 4.5 months, right?
Yep.
In 4.5 months, like I said, I'm 6 books in, all your episodes. I've started listening to another podcast series, and I'm about 70 or 80 episodes in that. I have had conversations with people like Jason Denham.
Yep, Vice
Mike
President.
Huff at GAT.
The CEO.
With Kilgore Industries. Mike Huff is with GAT.
Yep.
Daniel Ross, I still talk with him. I talked to him today, actually. And just
You
to
did.
say hey.
That's awesome.
I did, man. He's an awesome guy. I love that guy. And then I got to give a big shout out to Mr. Jimmy Collins.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's
former president of Chick-fil-A.
yeah.
Holy cow. I'll tell you, if I never knew what he did for a living or what his accomplishments were, just talking with him, the way he is astonishing. I wish everybody could spend an hour talking with Jimmy Collins, man. He will change your life.
And let me just say right here, anybody listening, you can go to episode 119, 121, 123, and that's where you first discovered Jimmy, was listening to my podcast, right? And then just let everybody know I've got three episodes, those ones I just gave you, that you actually can go hear him. But you actually, I don't remember if you talked to me or you just reached out to him, but how did you get to talk to Jimmy? You remember?
Oh, wow. I want to say it was LinkedIn. We had shared a couple messages back and forth, and he said, well, let's schedule a call. And boy, I tell you, he is punctual. He said he was going to call at such and such time. I don't remember what it was. And I'm sitting there holding my phone, nervous as can be, and as soon as it changed numbers, it started ringing. And man, it was a great conversation. He is a wonderful person. Definitely a role model that I would recommend looking up to. Great guy. And one of the things he said to me that has stuck with me is the best way to communicate is through your behavior. And I was horrible at that so many years, and I'm trying to get better. I got a long way to go, but no. So yeah, big thank you to Jimmy. Big thank you to all of them. All of them spent time talking to me. Little old me out in the middle of the Midwest. And, I've always thought of myself as pretty insignificant, and here I am talking to all these wonderful people that have incredible points of view about all the similar information, and just in their own little ways. And they all give you a nugget of their own. Yep. And it's been just fascinating to put all these pieces of the puzzle together. And man, it's an incredible puzzle so far, man. And you got me climbing, definitely. So I'm hungry for more.
That's awesome. So those two folks that Joshua just talked about, I shared about Jimmy. So there was actually three folks, but we talked about his podcast. But Jason Denham, I think he's been on 4 episodes, and Mike Huff, CEO of GAT, Airline Ground Support. I did a interview with him as well, like I'm doing here with Joshua, and that's Joshua had heard all of those folks, obviously, when he listened to all the podcasts. So then he was proactive and reached out to him and ended up being able to talk to him. And I know you get on Jason's Jason does a monthly leadership book study, usually on my books. He's about to start one this Saturday. I'm looking forward to being on it. But I know you get on and join those, so that's pretty good for you. So tell me, you're talking about your children. What I'm gonna jump around a little bit out of order of what I was gonna do, but while we still kind of was talking about your children, the impact. What's your big vision? I know you got a vision. You doing this for yourself and for your family, but there's something that underlying in you that this all aligns and fits very well with part of your mission. What is that?
Right. Well, how much time we got?
Go ahead. I can chop it up, and make it 2 episodes if I need to.
Well, I've always had this just huge heart for anything that involves kids, and I've never really kind of taken action on anything, but what I have found over the years is that anything that happens in a bad setting to a child, and I hear about it, man, it hurts. And, then I had my kids, and throughout the years, the last 15 years, watching them grow and deal with things, there's been some bad moments that they've had to go through, and man, it hurts. And it just seems to be this common theme. So, well, obviously I must care. So,
yeah.
And as I've grown with that in mind, I keep thinking too about, the younger people out there today. It seems, not all, but there are some that I think potentially a lot of them they don't know how to handle life. They're not prepared. They're not ready to go. And I'm not blaming anybody. I have no idea the reasons why, but it just seems like they're not as prepared as they could be. So I got to thinking about it and talking with my daughter and some of her friends and my son through a lot of conversations, and kind of came up with an idea of, well, what if one day I could end up doing kind of like what you're doing, reaching out to people, talking to them and educating them on certain things and helping them grow. Well, that's great for, adults that are in the workforce, and we've already hit the bad stuff and we're trying to turn around and go the other way. What if we could try to, minimize the bad stuff and have them ready to go as soon as they hit the streets? And so I just kept thinking, like, how could I do this? So I came up with, the best thing that I could come up with, analogy wise. And it involves driving, of course, because that's what I do day in and day out.
Yep.
And I thought, well, man, these kids need to take better advantage of their on-ramp, so to speak. So
On-ramp to life.
let's say, yeah, the highway is life, right?
Yeah.
And there's different lanes. Lane 1 is introductory lane, and lane 2 is going a little bit faster, but there's a little more involved with it, and so on and so on. And how many times we've been driving down the highway and somebody comes down that on-ramp and they're only doing 40 miles an hour trying to get onto a 70 mile an hour zone. It just doesn't work, right? So if you take that on-ramp and kind of describe it, and my daughter took to it right away, so I guess it works. But she's like, well, yeah, if that is all your growing up, your formal education, your informal education as far as experiences and things like that, that builds up your speed, right? Well, you want to hit that first lane, ready to merge in, smooth as can be. And, if you don't do the work and you don't put in the time and you don't have the right people helping you and the right sources, you're not going to build up enough speed. And when you try to jump on that highway of life, man, that's going to be a bumpy transition. So I'm trying to put something together and maybe do some test groups with my daughter's friends coming up soon and see what happens, what kind of results I get out of it. But man, I would love to do what you do and get into the schools and talk to these kids, and I don't know, try to help them be a little more prepared.
So you see everything you're doing now is like a huge foundation for that. I mean, you're working on yourself. Obviously, the better we all are, especially character-wise, the more influential we'll be. But you're also learning all these principles, like you said earlier, they apply everywhere. So all these principles you're learning, you can teach them to the teenagers or the kids and help them understand how those same principles apply in their life, no matter what grade they're in, no matter where they're going, no matter what their future holds. These are principles that apply to them too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, it's one of the things I remember hearing when I was younger too, is when you're learning or trying to learn a new language, they say that statistically, the younger you are, the quicker and the more success you have with learning that language.
Yep.
As versus an adult. And I think it kind of all revolves around just what you're fixed to and what your habits are and, things like that. Well, the young people are fresh and they're sponges. They're ready to go. They want to learn or they're a lot more capable of learning, I think. So like if we could get all this stuff in their program younger, I wonder what that would look like. So I don't know. It's definitely an interest and a passion of mine that I want to dive into. Just trying to figure it all out.
That's awesome, man. You hungry and you're doing the most important thing to get there is you're in sponge mode. That means you're soaking it up, and that's what you got to do. Well, I hope you enjoyed part 2 of 3 in this 3-part interview series with Joshua Davis. He's given us some golden nuggets, and he's not done yet. So I hope you come back next week and listen to part 3 of 3 in this series, where Joshua really talks about the impact his learning and developing himself has had on his job, his relationship with his leaders, his relationship with his co-workers, just his job in general. So that's what's coming up in part 3. he'll share some other things too. That's the main thing. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.